Show starts in 8 minutes. Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go! Show starts in 7 minutes.
It's refreshment time, folks.
Taste that beats the others. Cold Pepsi pours it on. Taste that beats the others. Cold Pepsi pours it on.
Yum, yum. It's a meal in itself. Our all-meat super dog. Enjoy one now.
Show starts in 6 minutes.
As everyone knows, rainbows usually have a treasure at the end. Let's follow this one and see if we can find the pot of gold.
Father, and I suppose you've come to claim me treasure.
Well, we'd like to see the gold first.
Faith, and there's better than gold in here, me lad. No, just look here, no.
Candy, refreshing soft drinks, popcorn, ice cream. Well, that's some treasure, but anyone can buy luscious treats like these at the snack bar.
You don't tell me. Do you suppose you could get me a job as a snack bar attendant?
Show starts in 5 minutes.
We're happy to have you with us this evening and want you to enjoy every minute of your stay here. And while you relax and stretch, visit our concession where you'll find something to please you. There are ice-cold drinks, delicious sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
You get more out of life when you go out to a movie.
Show starts in 4 minutes.
Visit our snack bar and treat yourself to some delicious Castleberry's pit-cooked barbecue sandwiches. Cook the Castleberry way, slowly over open pits of glowing charcoal, then seasoned with a sauce that's zesty, yet delightfully mild to please the entire family. Also at the snack bar, you'll find popcorn and soft drinks and candy and French fries to go with your Castleberry's barbecue sandwiches. There's plenty of time before the movie starts, so visit our snack bar right now for Castleberry's pit-cooked barbecue sandwiches.
Still plenty of time to come and be served at the refreshment center before showtime.
Show starts in 3 minutes. Show starts in 2 minutes.
Your attention, please. All new hotshot electric in-car heaters have been installed for your comfort and convenience. Just insert heater through car window and turn on the switch. When leaving, please turn switch off and replace on speaker post. Warning, high voltage. For your own safety, do not attempt to repair or remove wires. Do not attempt to open heater unit. If you need assistance, please notify the theater box office or concession manager.
Show starts in 1 minute.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater.
And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Chili Dilly, the personality pickle. Packed in a jar for the freshest flavor. Served cold in a sack for you to savor. So dainty to eat, no muss, no fuss. An ideal snack for all of us. Crisp, tender, and tasty with a bit of spice. Buy one now. Taste how nice. Snack bar clerks will knock themselves silly, speeding your order for a real Chili Dilly.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Did you miss us? We're back. I got my pencils. Welcome, everyone, to the Box Office Battles podcast with your friends from Jarrett Goes to the Movies. Eric and Greg. I gave you top billing this time. Is your mic on? Say something. You don't know. You were on a second ago. Hold on. Let me do this. All right. We're going to wait. Everyone, Eric has technical difficulties. We're getting off to an amazing start on here on the Box Office Battles podcast with Greg and Eric. Hey, everybody that was a big fan of Jarrett Goes to the Movies, here he comes back in again. Yes, no. What's your mic settings? Try now. Oh, he signed out again. All right. Well, I literally heard him a second ago before we went on, and then he went off. So I don't know what's going on. But anyway, he'll be back, and it'll be just like it was. This is a rip-roaring start. But anyway, for those of you who are fans of Jarrett Goes to the Movies, we're glad that you're here. we're really thankful for the support. Eric and I have been, ever since Jarrett Goes to Movies ended, we did like the final episode, the Uncle Buck episode together because Jarrett was out, and they asked me to co-host with Eric, and we had a great time, and we've talked about it ever since. We've been doing trivia together for the last several years since the pandemic and everything. So we've just kept in touch, and Eric came up with the idea. He was like, "Hey, do you want to like bring this thing back?" And so we decided to give it a shot. This has been about 6 months in the making, and the technical difficulties you can see, but we did, I swear we tested this several times. But anyway, we are here. And when Eric gets in, what we plan to do tonight is start a new type of podcast as far as movie reviews go, where we're going to take the top 8 films of a specific category, and then we're going to have them go head to head against each other in a bracket style of battle until we can whittle down what the number one movie of that category is. And tonight, our first category is the AFI's top 8 movies of all time. So we have Citizen Kane going up against Schindler's List. So if you look at our bracket, the way we've got it set up is, and I'll run through these really quick, they are right here, you've got Citizen Kane at the number 1 seed against Schindler's List. That's at the top of the bracket. And then down below that, we've got Raging Bull at number 4 against Singing in the Rain at number 5. And then we've also got The Godfather on the other side of the bracket against Lawrence of Arabia. And then we have finally Casablanca versus Gone with the Wind. So Eric and I are going to cover all of these over the next several weeks until we get down to who we think is the number 1 movie of all time. So that just killed a little bit of time, but Eric is still not back in, so I don't know what's going on. I do want to say one thing really quick before we get completely going here. We want to say our hearts go out to the people that are the victims of Hurricane Beryl right now down in Southeast Texas. I have family members that are in Southeast Texas that have been affected by this, that have had damage to their homes. My niece and other ones as well. Let's see if Eric has got going. And are you there, sir?
I don't know.
Right.
How am I?
It's Eric, everyone. We can hear him now.
I was just saying about a couple of hours ago via text that we should rename this show Two Old Dickheads Try to Figure Out All of This Technology without the help of Sean, without the help of anybody else. Just watch your granddad try to program a VCR, and that's what this podcast will be like.
That sounds about it.
We had this problem last time. I buy a $4,000 mic and can't even get it to work.
Well, the thing was, we tested it right before we went live. I could hear you just fine. And somewhere between that and going live, it went sideways.
Without me touching it, without any intervention from, and it just stopped working.
Yeah, I don't know. But we're here now. And we've got a fairly large crowd out there that is tuning in for our first show. So we best not suck. That's what I think.
It's like, why? Why are they doing that? Why are they subjecting themselves to it? But I appreciate it. Was actually really odd. I logged in and here's some familiar names back in the chat from days of yore, Greg.
Yes. Yeah, your days
of yore. And we're already off to a great start because not only could I not get my mic to work, but then YouTube immediately marked one of my comments in the chat as spam. And so it's really great. I blame all of this on Chili Dilly.
Yes. Really personality pickle.
Really caught me off guard there in the intro.
Yeah,
man, we've talked about this for so long. I'm glad we finally get to be about it. Here we are, and I'm super pumped about our format.
I was just going over that. And so let's take a look here real quick. Oops.
Tell these people what's up.
I know, right? There we go. That's it. So I was just going over the brackets before you came back in and just showing how we're going to each month and a half or so, we're going to do one of these categories. We've got some really good ones lined up in the future. We've got best sports comedies coming up. I actually picked up one the other day that I thought would be really cool. Best disaster movie of all time. There's all kinds of stuff like that. Armageddon, Poseidon Adventure, all kinds of good stuff.
Twister.
Twister, yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, I even forgot about Twister. But what we're dealing with now is the American Film Institute, AFI. They usually do a list, and they do it through polling of like the Oscar Academy members and different movie critics. I don't know all the criteria, but they put together a polling of movie professionals to determine the top 100 films. And they do this every year. And right now, these are the top 8. And what's interesting about this that I noticed when we were putting this bracket together was out of all of these films, Schindler's List is the only one that it's actually the youngest, and it was made in 93. So yeah, I think it was released 93, 94. So yeah, 93. And other than that, all of these other films are old. So what does that say? I mean, that newer movies suck, or that people just don't respond to them as like the greatest films ever?
That nostalgia is a very powerful thing in people's lives, and they think back to the way things used to be. I mean, I'll be curious to see. I've now seen, as we look at this bracket, 3 of the 8 films on this list, 2 of which were within the last 3 days. Which also brings me to just a quick side point. Greg, you could have told me when I said, hey, I'm going to watch Schindler's List tomorrow. You could have said, okay, buddy, that sounds awesome. Just keep in mind that motherfucker's 195 minutes long. God, man, it's like I'm getting in bed at 10 o'clock and I'm like, I guess I'll just throw this movie on. Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's a long one. I forgot how long it was. I think the only time I've ever seen that, and my wife and I talked about it today, was back in the 90s when it came out, and just a young lad. And I don't think I ever wanted to watch it again. Not that it's a bad film, but it was like, that's not one of those movies that is your go-to on a Friday night where you're like, oh, let's watch Schindler's List again. You know, it is, and we'll get into the details of that, but it's one of those things that, yeah, the length of it has a lot to do with it as well, but it's a great film, but it's a crazy, I gotta put this up there. We gotta comment.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld. That's good stuff. We were actually talking about that before the podcast, about the Seinfeld episode of Schindler's List, and thought about maybe putting some clips from there, but we don't want to get too much down the copyright era. But yeah,
we have experience on the Jarrett Goes to the Movies show of things going completely off the rails. When they start putting the ban hammer on you, it's hard to recover from it. So let's not tempt the copyright gods.
We will have a couple of clips from tonight's films, but only like 3. And I've put out there like 100 times, this is for movie critic use and it's fair use. So YouTube, please get off our backs. They're less than a minute. Leave us alone. So,
and we're watching them downloaded from pirated source, and all of the clips will be in Hindi. So you just
have
that's
the
the price
the Chinese subtitles.
It's the price we have to pay for trying to get around copyright.
So you're going to pay for Citizen Kane? Come on now.
No.
Oh,
that piece of shit? No. I'm just kidding.
We'll find out. So here's the way this is going to work, guys. So the way this is going to work is that we're going to talk about both movies. We're going to talk about the 8 seed first, Schindler's List, and then we're going to talk about Citizen Kane. And then Eric and I are going to vote. We're going to wait until the end to make a vote. We don't know who each other is voting for. If we agree that is the one film over the other, then that means that film wins. But if we don't agree, then we're going to go to the audience and see what the audience votes for by the end. So and if there's a lot of audience members that night, or we may even put it off until the next episode, or just reveal it later on in the week. But we want you guys to vote what you think as well. Even if we agree and one movie wins, we want to know what you guys think, because we'll put your stats up as well. A couple other great comments. I'd say, yeah, Chili Dilly is awesome. That was a great, the personality pickle. I saw that today and I was like, oh, that's got to be in the show.
I don't remember. What is that from? What is it? Just
it's one of those drive-in ads that you go to the drive-in when, like, I can relate. When I was a kid, we would go to the drive-in I don't want to date myself too much, but from the 70s, and those ads would show. And now that one's more like a 60s one, so I don't remember it, but I saw it today, and yeah, it's brilliant.
I mean,
I'm always going to think of the personality pickle.
I was right at the end. There was in the town I grew up in, there was definitely a drive-in movie theater at the intersection of the highway and kind of one of the roads here in town. But that has long since been replaced by like a Best Buy and a Golf Galaxy and all the other bullshit that you see every 4 miles as you go down the highway. So it's been a while. I hadn't thought of it. It's been a while.
Drive-ins were great, man. I grew up around them. I had a friend that worked at one. So as long as I came after the rush, he always let me in for free. And then we would just sit in the freaking playground that's in front. Shout out if you remember the drive-ins. We had a playground right up front and watch the movie because they had the big speakers up front and everybody else had the ones that they attached to their car. But then later on, it got to where you could just put the stereo onto a frequency and it would play on your car radio, but then it would drain your car battery. So that was another downside of that. But there's one near us. We used to go when the kids were little, and but damn, it's like you go and the show doesn't start until 9:00, and there's a double feature. You ain't out of there until after 1, depending on what movies there are. So yeah, it's a rough.
I don't want to sit in my car for 2 hours. I'm sorry. Like, okay, so the other day we took the kids to watch the new Minions movie.
Okay.
But Kelsey, for whatever reason, for those of you who don't know, my longtime partner and mother to 2 of my 3 kids, Kelsey, she bought tickets to like the regular movie theater, just the one with like seats and not the heated recliner like that my kids are used to.
Right.
And I mean, it was chaos, Greg. These kids were like, is this what it was like to go to the movies in the 1950s? And it didn't have a table that swung over in front of them. Like after you get seated and you move the table over and put your snacks and stuff on it. And they just looked at me holding their nachos and popcorn and candy going, well, what do I do with all this bullshit? I'm like, you hold it in your lap like everyone's done forever until the last 5 years when they started making theaters with reclining seats and tables. They were horrified just the entire time. So that's bad enough. I can't imagine like taking my kids and me and sitting in a car for 2 hours. I just talk about one of the levels of hell that's on there somewhere.
It's the way you look at it. You're like back in the day, you could smoke in your car. You couldn't smoke. Well, I guess you could smoke in the movie theaters, but I mean, easier to smoke in your car. You could freaking drink. Everybody would go there to party and hang out. And a lot of times they didn't stay in their car. They were, you'd outside sitting on the hood with the little speaker going. I mean, we used to we had, the whole minivan thing, open up the back hatch, park it on an incline, and then have like a mattress back there and just chill. So the only thing is like mosquitoes and shit would bother you. So it was give and take.
And you never knew when the sharks were going to show up and start their snapping. And then all of a sudden you and your jet boys had to get to your snapping. And then you had to pull your switchblade comb out of your pocket. And
nice.
I don't know when you grew up, but it sounds like something that would be like that.
It wasn't that long ago, but I know the reference, so I appreciate it. Yeah, no, drive-ins were awesome. I think that the opening that was a lot of fun. So, yeah, some people did have some comments on drive-ins. Cripplelicious, I love drive-in stuff.
Oh, I thought he said Toy Story 4, but he saw
Toy when I was 4.
Toy. Okay, I get it.
That's Toy.
Not Toy Story.
Yeah, my mother loved horror movies, so she would go when I was like 7, 8 and watch things like Black Christmas and crazy stuff and just say, hey, I would, after like the main movie, I would have to go in the back seat and go to sleep
and watch your iPad.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I had to etch a sketch. so I'd have to lay down, but he never watched me, so I'd be peeking around the side of the seat watching all this craziness like Halloween and Black Christmas and crazy stuff. But yeah, my mom loved the drive-in, so I spent a lot of my time there, so it was good.
And look at you now. No long-term psychological effects from
no, not at all. Not at all.
Black Christmas.
Have you ever seen Black Christmas? Oh my goodness. It's a mess.
But it was on torn tube, and it was way different than what you're describing.
Yeah, no, that's
I live in Texas. You can't watch that, so
it's not the same Black Christmas. So
all right. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about. You said we're talking about Schindler's List first.
Yes, we are. So this is our matchup for tonight. Now we're going to do double episodes after this one. So we're trying to keep this as close to under an hour as possible. So since it's the first episode, we'll give a little bit of leeway. We had to do some intro and get some stuff out of the way, but we're going to talk about these movies here. And we're going to start with Schindler's List. So Schindler's List, came out in 1993. When I watched it yesterday, I rewatched it for the first time to get ready for the podcast. And I had a hard time with it. I mean, I love the movie. I think it's a phenomenal film. I found myself struggling with so much tragedy. So much. It's like once it gets into it, it does not let up.
I think that's got to be a common sentiment among people who watch this movie. I watched it for the very first time yesterday. It was a lot to take in, a lot of trauma, a lot of feelings that, I don't know. I suppose if you go to the movie to be entertained, I mean, yes, I was entertained, but in the worst way and the best way. It was really complicated, the whole thing. But I think if you don't feel that way, that would be a red flag for me. Someone who watched Schindler's List and was like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like whatever. Like, it was what?
So I was looking at the IMDb reviews today, just out of curiosity, and there was a lot of 10s, but there were people literally chastising those who marked it a 1 and said it was overrated. And that's what they were going for. This movie's so overrated, dude. It's boring.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can understand not wanting to watch it again when you're done, but that doesn't make it a 1.
No.
So I don't know. So what do you got for us? Let's see. Let's see what we got.
So the thing that is interesting about this film is, what I loved about it was they get a relative unknown, because if people that aren't really familiar with this film, was it Liam Neeson? I think he was Darkman maybe before this. I mean, he wasn't doing much. And he was actually, I read a thing today where he was actually on stage doing a stage play and auditioned for Schindler's List and was like, I'm not getting this movie. I'm nobody. And actually he was getting such rave reviews on Broadway that Steven Spielberg, Kate Capshaw, that's Steven Spielberg's wife, for those who don't know, and his mother showed up to meet him. And the mother, when he opened the dressing room door, he was like in a robe. He was like basically naked. The mother broke down in tears and was like, I absolutely loved you. I thought it was an amazing performance. And he leaned down and he hugged her and he kissed her on the forehead without even thinking. And Kate Capshaw turned to Steven Spielberg and she goes, that's what Oscar Schindler would do.
I thought they walked in. The story I heard was they walked in. Yes, he was still semi-nude, but they found him after the show with a notebook out, and he was going, coffee, dryer sheets.
He's making a list is what you're going for.
Yeah. And Kate Capshaw in that moment turned to Steven, her husband, filmmaker extraordinaire, for those of you who don't know Steven Spielberg. And she said, this is a man who respects lists and makes lists. This is our guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know. It could be either story.
Yeah, it was something like that. It definitely was.
Sure.
But for those who haven't seen the film, it is a really good character case study. We've seen a lot of these redemption movies where the character is so over the top evil or so over the top grumpy or whatever. In this case, Oscar Schindler is just an opportunist.
We do have one of those guys, though. Ralph Fiennes as Eamon.
Oh, yeah.
However you pronounce that last name.
Yes.
Is about as chillingly evil a villain.
Oh, without a doubt.
As you'll ever see. Now, up there as I was watching it with Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, like there's other notable bad guys in film, like that just come up when you think of bad guys in movies. Alan Rickman, I think, in Die Hard, Javier Bardem, No Country for Old Men, even like Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct. But I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find one as unapologetically in no redemptive qualities at all than Ralph Fiennes played this character.
Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka, one of the best villains of all time.
If you watch that as a horror movie, it can be certainly seen that way.
Dude, it's creepy, but I agree. And what's interesting about Ray Fiennes' character, he doesn't even show up in the movie until like after the first hour.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of impact. Now, granted, there was still 2 hours left, but
that first hour really flew by. It was the second 2 hours and 15 minutes that really started to drag. But I couldn't take my eyes
we made the friends along the way.
Yeah, but he was fascinating to me. And I mean, maybe Fiennes has two of the biggest bad guy roles ever, because wasn't he Voldemort? You're not supposed to say.
No, well, I just did it.
I'm
sorry. I didn't realize that's what you were going for, and I blew it.
So that's twice that. I mean, but that's not okay. So that's a bad guy, but that's from like little kids literature. This is maybe it was his performance. Maybe it was his performance combined with the real life believability that this is something that actually happened that made it extra chilling. But I mean, talk about a guy that nailed a role of someone who is just a total piece of shit.
It's funny that you mentioned the Harry Potter connection, because when I was watching it, I had this little, of course, the second time I watched it, I had this little thing about it. What if this was Voldemort before he became Voldemort? He was the same kind of character. But we'll talk a little bit more about that character in a minute. I did want to get into the Ray Fiennes, or the Oscar Schindler character by Liam Neeson, because what's so fascinating about him is they do this character study where in the first at least hour of the film, he's basically in it for the money.
He'll happily go along with the status quo.
Yeah.
As long as it personally benefits him.
Yeah. He plays it for the money, and he doesn't mind that he's using slave labor. That's the whole point.
Yes.
It's free labor, and to be able to manipulate the war effort in his favor. I actually read something today that the real Oscar Schindler actually helped the Germans create propaganda that allowed him to invade Poland. He didn't know what he was doing, but because he had helped them with this propaganda, they looked favorably on him, which opened the door for his business dealings. So he was really in it for the money. Like when you first see him in the beginning of the film, he's a party dude. I mean, this whole opening scene with the Germans in that room, he starts off all by himself, and he starts inviting everyone over to his table until it becomes this big sea of all this influential people, and he's in. And so you kind of get that idea that that's what Oscar Schindler is about. He's about the money.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. Again, I hadn't seen this, and outside of some of the obvious themes of the movie, I didn't know a whole lot about it. Was surprised that the list itself is only in like 1 minute of this 3 hour long movie. I thought the list would be a bigger character. But so when I'm watching that scene,
that's the list.
and he's greasing palms, and he's got this gift of gab and this aura about him, I wasn't sure what I was watching. Is he con man? Is he a opportunist type character? I wasn't exactly sure. Now maybe he was a little of all that, but like you said, it was a really complicated character, and I didn't know that this was Liam Neeson's first major film role.
Right.
But he nailed it. That's a complicated character, and I think he did a really good job of letting us try our best as an audience to sort out who this person is as the story went along.
Well, yeah, and there were other people that were up for the role. I was reading about today was Harrison Ford was up for it, And he told Steven Spielberg, I can't do it because people associate me too much with Indiana Jones, and it's too important a story to tell for people to be distracted. Kevin Costner was another, same reason. And so when the whole thing happened with him on stage, that's why they solidified it. Another scene I really love that establishes the Schindler character that just blew me away was when his wife shows up, and he is with anybody, because he was just banging everyone. And just the fact that he tells his wife, oh, she's so embarrassed. Isn't she cute?
Yeah.
You really like her.
just because you like her doesn't mean I have to like her.
That was and so it really establishes this guy as a narcissist. He is self-centered at the time. So it is this really good redemption story, because as he goes along and he starts working with Stern, the Ben Kingsley character, and building the factory, and he starts to getting to know the people on a personal level. And that's what always affects people when you start identifying names. That's why, like, you're not, if you take hostages, you're never supposed to learn their names, or if they have kids, because you don't want to be, and that's what
Why wouldn't you phrase that from the victim's point of view, Greg? It makes you sound like a psychopath. Why wouldn't you say, if you're ever kidnapped?
Yes, you need, well, that's what they train you. Yeah. I should have gone from the victim point of view, but I don't want to reveal too much about myself.
Yeah. My name is Eric. I've got 3 kids. I would tell my whole life story. And then, sadly for me, that might annoy the shit out of them to hear me talk to them for that long. And then it's all over. But
well, yeah, you'd be blubbering, and some people will listen and some don't. It's like the woman who comes to his office and begs for him to get her mother and father because she's heard that he's a good man, and he hates being called a good man. And what does he do after he yells and throws her out of his office? He goes to Stern, goes, get these 2 people out.
Yeah, I was a little confused by that because I wasn't sure if that's all an act. Who are you putting that act on for? Does he not need her going around town? He'd have a line out the door, right, for 200. What does this mean?
If you're a farmer, you'd never let your kids name the animal.
Oh, because then, right. Because then it's real sad. Yes, I asked my dad. My dad talked about being in Future Farmers one time, and he said, we raised this pig, and it won 2nd place in the Bryan County Fair. And I was a little kid and was like, that's really neat. So where's the pig now? And he said, I don't know. We sold it, and it got turned into bacon. Oh, well, I don't like the way that story ended.
Well, that's have you ever heard the joke about the pig with a wooden leg?
No.
So real quick, family's farmhouse is burning down, and the pig comes in and he saves them one by one and pulls them out of the fire. And then a stranger comes up and goes, hey, why's your pig got a wooden leg? You go, special pig like that, you don't eat all at once. So that's the quick version. So, but yeah, like if the pig's named Wilbur, you're not going to want to eat him. So that's really good. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a crazy analogy, but it works in this sense because the Jewish people became people to him, which to a lot of the Nazis, they were animals. They were less than. My wife watched it with me, and she was struggling with the atrocities. And it was like, you have to understand that they looked at them as less than human, less than animals.
Yeah, subhuman. And I struggle to wonder, Greg, and I think just watching this movie and trying to hypothesize on it probably isn't doing the entirety of World War II and the European theater and the Holocaust justice, right? But how much, certainly we have heard the phrase, I was just following orders. And we know that that doesn't stand up to any scrutiny at all, right?
Right.
But I do wonder at what level from top down did everyone really feel that they were subhuman, or did you have to just adopt that as a worldview in order to do the things that were done to this group of people? How else could you explain all of the things that one human was able to do to another in mass, except to frame it that way, that these aren't people, that they're commodities to be used for your capitalist endeavors, for your medical research, for your whatever other horrible, awful things that you can think of to use this human chattel for, until you have no use for them anymore, at which point, like the things we saw in the film. I mean, I struggled very deeply with a lot of this. And maybe there was a time where obviously watching this still would have been sad, would have affected me, but something in my old age, having children, something...
Well, that should make it worse.
It did. It made it a lot worse. It was really tough.
Yeah. I think, the older you get, the more that you see of humanity. You're younger, you're a little bit, kind of shut off from it because you're young. And even when I was young, though, I was still, gutted by some of these. I think it was harder for me this time, just with the life experiences that we have. And, it's crazy, because without getting too political, is that the Jewish, what they went through, the Jewish people, what they went through in the 40s is similar to a lot of what other groups are going through right now. And not to call anything out, but it's still people that are looked at as being less than human and that are being able to be exterminated without prejudice. So it's crazy. But
it is.
The thing that changes Schindler around, and it's a very significant moment in the film. And what's really good was I read that Steven Spielberg was having a problem with the original screenplay of being able to show this man having his redemption moment, what made him change. And so they had to kind of build it around an event. And it's when the people of Poland got rounded up in mass, where they just pull them out of their homes, and the ones that resist are getting shot. And, Liam Neeson, Oscar Schindler, and his mistress are watching it from the hill. And you have the little girl in the red coat that is wandering around as all of this craziness is going on. And it's one of the only color in the entire film, except for like the beginning and the end, that you see this. And it's like she stands out. And there's so many stories about the girl in the red coat. And it's really a significant part of the film. When you saw it for the first time, what did it make you think? Because you just watched it for the first time yesterday.
Yes. Okay. So I have to admit that I have a criticism of this.
Oh, really?
I've read about the, like you said, quote unquote, girl in the red coat. I've read about the decision to use this one small use of color as a storytelling device, as a plot device for emphasis, like you said, to throw a real highlight onto what is it that changed in Oscar's mind that starts our act 2 of this film. For a movie that so elegantly presents this subject matter, to me, it felt really heavy-handed and too on the nose to me. This movie trusted us as an audience so much throughout the entirety of this film. Spielberg trusted himself as the person telling this story so much. And then to just be like, oh, hey, look, it's a girl in a red coat. Oh, hey, it's that same girl in a red coat, but she's dead.
Yeah.
Just seemed to me to crumple that trust up and toss it aside. I was smart enough as a viewer to watch 3 hours and 14 minutes of this film in black and white. Yes, we have the cedar scene at the beginning and at the end, but for the bulk of the movie, I was trusted as an audience member to understand what I was watching, to on an even keel take that and process it, except for this one thing, and I wasn't trusted enough to see the significance had it stayed in black and white. Maybe I'm not thinking about it correctly, I'm overlooking something, but to me that just really like I said, too on the nose for me.
Oh yeah.
But I suppose I understand why it was done that way. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, well, what I saw was that it was one of those things where there was a couple of stories, but the one that stood out was that Spielberg himself talked about that when they saw the girl in the red coat, she was milling around while all these people were rounded up, and the Germans don't even acknowledge her, and she stands out like a sore thumb. And it was, again, what the way Spielberg put it was she was symbolic of the way this atrocity was going on in the Western world. It's standing out like a sore thumb, and no one is paying attention. And so that was where the kind of the symbolism came in. I read that. That's what Steven Spielberg said. He also said that it was like Katharine Hepburn had told him a story where she had seen a girl in a red coat during this mass craziness, and no one was paying attention to her, and it stood out for him, so he decided to incorporate it. But you having what you said, I can see the where you think it's maybe a little bit gimmicky. I think at the time, I remember there wasn't a lot of movies. There's movies that had been done that were black and white with a little pop of color in there that they would sell paint or something like that. I think it was a surprise to a lot of the audiences, so it did affect them a little bit. So I'm kind of on the fence on that one. I thought it was impactful, but yeah.
Well, as impactful as just seeing the girl in the red coat, that liquidation of Plashoff, quite possibly the most intense 15-20 minutes of film that I've ever seen, maybe bar the intro to Saving Private Ryan.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there may be more impactful single scenes out there. The I Am Your Father from Empire Strikes Back, the chest burster in Alien, or the flying bike in front of the moon in E.T. or something. But extended scenes like this, 15-20 minutes, I don't think I took a breath that entire time until, I guess I thought it was Schindler's wife up on top of the hill, but his mistress just says, "Can we please leave?"
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, let's please leave, because this is a lot. And that scene from the hill with flashes going off in random. Oh man, it's
a mess. It is a mess.
Tough. But that whole that 15-20 minutes, that subject matter aside, it's really brilliant filmmaking. Who could watch that and not be caught up in the chaos and the mayhem and the hate and feeling sorry for the victims? I just really, like I said, Private Ryan, that opening 15 minutes is equally chaotic, mayhem, evil, willingness of spirit, weakness of flesh, whatever. That was pretty neat. Just from where that girl in the red coat, originated from. That was
without a doubt
pretty intense.
My worst part in that whole thing was so funny because this was the first time I'd watched it in years. And when they look under the bed and there's nobody under the bed, and my brain actually went, well, if somebody was smart, they'd get in the slats under the bed. And then sure as shit, they turn the bed over and a dude is under the slats, and then they just light him up. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt like I did it. I felt like I ratted him out.
You ratted him out.
Was like, that's what I would do. And that one, I think, was the worst kill in that whole sequence. It was unbelievable. Gickler had a comment real quick. Old friend of both Jarrett Goes to the Movies and hopefully a longtime friend of this new podcast. Spielberg realized that the average moviegoer it's a little backhanded compliment for you there.
I don't think so. I think we know John well enough to know that wasn't a compliment. I certainly cannot hold myself up as some above average intelligence person. I really appreciate. This is going to sound so ironic for anyone who knows me as a person, but I really appreciate subtlety, Greg.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I appreciate it so much because I'm so unwilling to embrace it in my own life. So when someone takes the time and the care to expertly use subtlety, I really appreciate that. My own life notwithstanding. So I think it just bummed me out that I felt pretty pounded by that.
So here's the thing. We're not going to go down the road too much, but I really agree with you on that, because when a lot of people criticize things today as being woke, all right, so that's a big word that goes around, is woke. I don't have a problem with a social message in a film, but I do have a problem with being beat over the head with the bat, because that's just not good writing. It's just you're basically writing the stuff down on a page and saying, do this. And it's like, no, that's not how things go. You have to, subtlety is way more impactful when you teach somebody a lesson without them realizing it than preaching at them in a film. That's a big difference.
Yeah, within the four corners of media, as it relates to wokeness, although I've never had anybody give me any definitive example of what that means, or I think it is just a pejorative that
I agree.
Part of the cultural zeitgeist. But within the four corners of media, I agree with you. There is a lot more room for films like Idiocracy that will just take you down. I won't say that Idiocracy is a subtle film, but at the very least it sets up a premise and follows through on that premise in a consistent way, as opposed to kind of, like you said, well, I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, because
it uses humor to get its point across, because it's so ludicrous.
Yes,
that
using hyperbole to make the point.
Exactly. Yeah, without a doubt. All right, let's get back into Citizen Kane, because now we're going to talk about this this son of a bitch right here, Amon Goth, who was real character. He was the guy who ended up leading the roundup of all of the Polish Jews, and then actually ran the Polish concentration camp in the film and in real life. And this guy was wow. We talked about it earlier. I read his real story, and the movie, in my opinion, was tame compared to what this guy really did in real life, and which is crazy.
I am sure that I think you just said maybe this was the girl in the red coat was the most saddest or impactful death in the film, in a film that is filled with unfair deaths. So that conversation about real power that he has, and then in the next scene he tries his very best to pardon what's that boy's name, Waszczek.
Oh right, yes. So
then seconds later guns him down. And I just went, God damn, we really aren't going to see anything but absolute evil from this guy, are we? I thought we might. I don't know why I thought that, but in my mind, as I'm watching that, I'm going, okay, we're about to turn a corner. He's going to help Oscar create two lists. There will be 2,000. But anyway,
the scene you mentioned, and actually I've got a still from that. It is a brilliant scene. It's where Oscar and him have that discussion on whether you get power through fear or do you get power through mercy. And I love how Oscar gets to him for just a minute, and he explains to him how it is Caesar, or Nero, is one of the Roman emperors, how he showed more mercy and people respected him rather than ruling through fear, and he had the people loved him. And this scene where Ralph Fiennes gets into the mirror and is like, I pardon you. It's so, and it lasts about 15 minutes. It lasts about 15 minutes, because before you know it, the sucker's out there with his freaking rifle shooting.
God bless it.
Good Lord.
His bathtub was not clean.
Oh, I know. Oh, did you use lye? No. Oh, well, you're fine
And
for now.
listen, I have had in previous days a household help come and clean up around the place. And maybe I was left dissatisfied sometimes about the state of things when I returned home. My underwear weren't folded exactly to my exacting specifications, Greg.
Yeah, yeah.
The thought of gunning her down as she walked through the courtyard of my abode didn't occur to me. Yeah, what a piece of shit. I really thought as he looked in the mirror and he would admire Oscar because he says in that scene, I see you drink, but you're never drunk. And it seemed like he admired the steadiness of the character. Maybe at this point in time, I'm thinking maybe he sees something in himself that's off balance or something's not making sense to him and he wonders why. And this is the opportunity to really start to focus in on what that is. And nope, he's still just a bastard. It was awful.
Pretty much. And one other scene that and to talk about this guy, and then we'll move on because we got to get into Citizen Kane, is this scene here. Whew, talk about one of the luckiest SOBs in the world. I mean, seriously. Whew.
And so here I thought, if you've
fired at that dude,
yeah,
and
if you've seen this and the gun keeps misfiring, but to me, I thought that would end up worse if you're that person on your knees and you're just bracing for impact. And listen, once it happens, it's over. You no more. There's no sadness on your part. You're just dead. It's over. But hearing the click, and then you've got to wait for however long for the next one, and you're stuck there in this limbo of fear as they try to figure out why they aren't able to kill you just yet, and they try it again, and you hear the click. That feels like emotional torture to a level even beyond some of these things. I equate it, Greg, with later on when we see the women show up to Auschwitz and they go into the shower, the emotional terrorism of them looking up at the pipes, wondering what is about to come out of there.
Yeah.
The wondering, that split second of nothing's actually happening to you at the moment. In this exact moment, outside factors be damned, you're alive, nothing's going on, but that anticipation of what happens next. And for this guy, I was honestly, as bleak as this movie was really surprised that this guy made it out of this, that they just gave up. That was really odd to me.
I really thought he was going to beat him to death, and then he only beats him a couple times, and I was like, "Geez, and he ends up making it out, and it was because not all of them do. Like if you were, and it plays with your brain. That's what's so gut wrenching about this film is the earlier scene where the guy is, pleading with him, the guy with one arm, and they just take him out. And so it had that earlier scene where it was a callback to that, and it was horrible.
I don't know how you'd live the rest of your life without hearing your, I don't know, car's automatic door lock, hear that click without having a visceral reaction to it. I don't think that you could.
No.
I mean, it is haunting watching this film, and we have to remember, and I think what makes the movie even more powerful is that we are not watching fiction. We are watching nonfiction. If that specific scene never played out in the real world, fine. But the absolute terror that this group of people, that people as a whole, and individuals went through in, I would venture to guess, Greg, far more fucked up situations than some of the ones we even saw on screen.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, man.
Yeah. When you look at the reality of it, a lot of people say this is what comes closest to reality, but reality is so much far beyond it. I mean, a couple of quick things. I got to talk about the kids in the movie.
Yes.
And this poor kid. Oh my God, looking for a place to hide throughout because they're taking all the kids away, and you know what they're doing with the kids, and the kids know what they're doing with the kids. And he looks in an oven, he looks under boards, and finally he goes right to the freaking outhouse and jumps in. Yeah, and then there's people in there. There's kids in there telling them to get out. Well, it's a little too late. He's not getting back up through the hole. That poor kid, man.
I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. I have another child. She's older than kind of the age group that we're concentrating on here in this scene and in the film. And it was hard for me not to kind of allow my mind to drift to how would my kid, these scenes of women running after trucks filled with their children, of children being ripped from their parents' arms. I can hardly think of it enough to even talk about it, Greg. Any parent would feel the same way. I'm not unique in that.
Yeah.
But I allowed my mind to wander enough to, would my 5-year-old or 9-year-old, would they run away? Would they help someone hide like we saw in some other scenes? Right. Would they listen, would my soft ass kids open up a toilet and agree to jump waist deep into human excrement, or would they just be like, nope, fuck this, like I'll just walk out there? I mean, I have no idea, and I'm very lucky, obviously, to not have to wonder, I don't think, what that situation would be like in reality. But boy, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
It is crazy because it's a different time. What's the old saying? Hard times make hard men, and then hard men make soft times, and soft times make soft men. It just keeps going around in a circle. So you have to deal with it. But yeah, you don't know what you would do until you get put in that situation. God forbid that they ever get put in that situation ever again. But who knows with the way the world is. This is my favorite kid right here. They, in the credits, they call him OD, or Chicken Boy. And so they refer to him as OD, just OD. I don't know. It's like initials. But what a kid, man. He's like working for the Germans, blowing his whistle, and he sees the people that he knows and the little girl that he knows. He tells them to hide. One of my favorite characters in the film. And then later on, one of my favorite scenes is when they're looking for the kid the person that killed the chicken or stole the chicken, and Ray Fiennes gets up to him. One of the best scenes in the movie, in my opinion. Probably one of my top 5 favorite moments is when they kill the dude, and he's like, somebody needs to tell me who stole the chicken. And he raises his hand and he points at the dead guy. He goes, he did.
It was him. It might have been the only time I smiled in 3.5 hours of this thing, because that was, first of all, I didn't realize it was the same kid from before.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't paying that close attention, I suppose, or just the difference in views. But yeah, that was really clever, and it saves his life because they see that there could be a use for a clever little kid in the factory, and so away he goes.
Yeah, I really thought that whole scene was awesome. The other one that I thought, that because there is a little bit of levity in the film, the scene where Isaac Stern is on the train and Schindler's trying to find him because that's his boy, that's the guy he's trying to find. And he goes to the two German officers, and they're like, "There's nothing we can do." And then he's like, all right, what is your name? I love that. What is your name? And he starts writing it down in a little book. All right, guys, you'll be on the Russian front by next weekend. And then the next scene, they're going, the two German guys, Mr.
Stern.
That is honestly in a film that's full of tragic moments. Those things are like very rare where you get a moment of laughter, which is, God, this movie does not have much of it.
It's as it shouldn't. There's no sense in, if you're going to make a movie like this and the care that went into making the movie, then there's no sense in polishing the edges enough to make audiences in 1993 feel a little better as they walk out of the movie they paid $4.50 for at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Sorry, that's not this film. There's enough films out there that you can go watch that either, I'm just using this term loosely, that whitewash history into a more palatable film for you, or ignore just enough so that you don't feel uncomfortable. That you can go watch those. You can go find those that they intentionally, it seems, did not do that in this film.
No,
is great because there's no room for that. This tells the story of one of, if not the worst atrocities committed in human history. Maybe the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia is up there. Some of the Stalin starvation stuff that we can easily rattle off the top of our heads. Any number of atrocities, like Mike says, is a real indictment on humans' capability of doing this to each other in very large volumes. Sadly.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Rwanda is a recent one, is what Kerplicious puts out there. But yeah, it makes you wonder if we're wired differently, because me and my wife, after the movie, I mean, she was, because we hadn't watched this since the 90s, so it was like reliving it, and it was like, what makes people do that? And it makes you wonder how some people are wired to hate that much, to where another person's life is so meaningless, an innocent life, not even somebody who's committed any crimes or anything like that, or committed, just an innocent person that you just want to see dead. That makes no sense. So it's crazy. But let's wrap up the rest of the film, because after the movie, one of the things that's really interesting is when Schindler sets them free, when the war comes to an end, and he tells the German soldiers, hey, I know you've got orders to clean the camp, but you can go ahead and do that, or you can just go home and not go home as murderers. You can go home with a clear conscience. And then the Russians come in and go, hey, you're free, but don't go east because we hate you.
Yeah, and west probably isn't a whole lot better.
No, and so this scene with the march, in fact, Steven Spielberg is apparently in one of the men in this march, one of the people that are in this march, which I thought was fascinating, as it's symbolic, of their nomadic people trying to find a home. And we're not going to get into modern day what's going on. I'm just saying it back then, trying to be refugees and find out. And then, of course, the final scene with the putting the rocks on Schindler's grave is very poignant and touching. I think the scene with Schindler when he breaks down, when he kind of collapses, although the fact that he should have done more, and all these people are so, it is a really powerful scene, and it's extremely well acted by Liam Neeson.
I agree.
Yeah, all these people realized how much he'd done for them, how much he tried to do, but he felt, and it was a brilliant, poignant scene the way it played out, how he just collapses when they give him the ring that that shows where one saves a human life, you save, it's really touching.
I often wonder about that for people who work in, let's say, the medical field, maybe first responders to traffic accidents, and I wonder how you could be okay when you're daily or weekly surrounded by tragedy and death, and those that you were unable to do anything for And but there must be enough value in those that you are able to help, those that you are able to save, to make that job worth it. I don't think I have the emotional constitution to handle a job like that. I think that the losses would far outweigh the wins for me. I would be a mess and a wreck at all times. Perhaps, Greg, you can shed some light on this, because my understanding is you were a trained medic, right? So
well, close. so I worked in a hospital. I was in administration, so I worked in information systems. But when I was deployed, everybody pitches in and does everything. I was very close with people who were trained medics, and I used to do litter training and used to do litter work, and when people came off of choppers. So yes, it is. But I basically worked with computers, so I was lucky. But there was things that you do see that it does affect you for a long time. I one time in particular, I was working in an ER, and we had 3 Marines who went down in a helicopter, and they were brought into the emergency room to basically be pronounced because they were gone. And I had to help unload them from the ambulance. And that was I was 23 at the time. And that's the first I'd seen, other than family members at a funeral. First I'd seen a real dead body. So it was rough. And so it is one of those things that, I did 22 years in the Air Force. I don't regret it. But the funny thing is it's like Oscar Schindler. Sometimes you feel like you don't do enough. You feel like, okay, after 22 years, I could have given more. And I think everybody does that. I think that people are like that, where you when you look back on the things that you've done in life, you could have done more. And I think that's why it's so poignant. And I think that it closes the redemption circle of Oscar Schindler. It really does. From a guy that you start the movie 3 hours into the movie that is a complete selfish, narcissistic asshole, and then turns into this redemptive figure that had saved so many lives. And they pointed out in the credits that there were 6,000 descendants of the Schindler Jews at that time. That was in 93. So yeah, I mean, raise a glass and yeah.
Thanks, Oscar. I do wish that scene with the rocks would have been an epilogue at the end of the credits. It felt a little out of place, just kind of going.
It was pretty long.
And the movies
credits rolling. They could have had the little
you know how they do that? They move the credits to the side, and here pops up a little montage of things, or I don't know.
We kid. All right, so that is Schindler's List. So let's all download that into our brain, because that's just one of the 2 movies we're covering tonight, and they're going head to head. Now we get into the number 1 seed, and this movie is considered by the American Film Institute, 1941, Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, of being the greatest movie of all time.
It is important to keep in mind that the American Film Institute is made up of a bunch of fucking nerds who fucking nerdly sit there and watch nerdy movies for the sake of being nerds. Greg?
No, I agree. If you're a movie nerd, and I am, this is one of your favorite films.
This can be hard film to watch as a non-academic, non-scholarly audience member, because if you, like so many people do, retreat to the arts of whatever kind, as a method of entertainment, or as a diversion from the things going on, the groundbreaking sound editing score, no one gives a shit about that. So I'm playing that up because I did not find this movie to be as insufferable as I went into it thinking it might be. But I do think that you framed it properly, that the movie people, quote unquote, have this one ranked very highly. I have read.
Yeah, and there's a reason.
I am going to defer to you to lead that part of the conversation, because as a non-academic and as a non-scholarly movie person, a lot of it, I'm sure, is lost on me.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
It wouldn't be lost on someone with a little more academically focused view.
And so here's the thing. I am perfectly willing to sacrifice this movie. I'm if it doesn't win tonight, I'm willing to sacrifice it. However, I'm going to tell a sad story about my childhood. And so everybody that is in the Box Office Battles podcast world are going to hear this for the first time. And then I want you to let it sink in to why Greg is the way he is. All right. So when I was a kid, my mom and dad got divorced when I was 5. And I would retreat into TVs and movies as kind of that whole thing. A lot of people do that. So I'm not saying I'm special. However, when I would go stay with my dad on the weekends, he would like, what do you want to do? And I'd want to go to the movies. So my father would take me to the Allen Park Theater in Michigan. I got to pick out any movie I wanted to see. Didn't matter the rating. And I would pick these out based on what I saw trailers. And I'm talking from the time I was 6 years old until 15. And my dad would buy the tickets. I would sit down. He'd sit down next to me. And then he would get up and leave. And I didn't know where he went. And then what happened, I would go out into the lobby looking for him at 7, 8 years old. And he would have paid an usher to, hey, what do you want? You know, I'll get you popcorn. I'll get you soda. What do you want, kid? Blah, blah, blah. And he was at the Allen Park bar across the street. And he just paid the usher to make sure I didn't leave, so that when the movie was over, he would call him, he would come back over and get me, and he wouldn't sit there and watch the movie with me. I realized that after I was like 8 or 9. All right. So I watched a lot of movies as a kid, and that was just kind of the escape on the weekends. That's what I did. Now, Citizen Kane was one of those things that I was fascinated with older films, because even though I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, I was fascinated with older films just because of the construct. And so it was one of those that I just rented and watched on a Saturday afternoon with no distractions, nobody around. And I was literally blown away for a lot of reasons. The story itself, the way it was framed from 1941. So we're talking Orson Welles does this movie that's completely out of linear sequence, way before Quentin Tarantino does Pulp Fiction. And he frames this complete and utter story of a singular man based on a real person, by the way, that he completely pissed off. William
Randolph Hearst, yeah.
And Marion Davies, his mistress, who Orson Welles later said, I didn't mean to make fun of her. She got caught up casualty, got in the crossfire. So
sorry, ho.
Yeah. He actually later did her autobiography, like the foreword. So yeah, but it's one of those things that watching the film, I was captivated the first time I watched it, and I've watched it a bunch of times since. So unlike Schindler's List, where I've watched twice now, Citizen Kane, I must have watched at least 7, 8 times over my lifetime, and I'm never bored with it. So real quick, I'll just go into the synopsis so people can understand if who've never seen the film. An old gentleman who's made of millions and maybe billions at the time passes away, laying in his bed, and he's holding a snow globe, and he says his final dying words, which is Rosebud.
Oh!
He says Rosebud.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Then he drops the globe, which is a brilliant scene with the way the filming was. The filming for 1941 is outstanding with the cinematography, so you can't deny that. And nurse comes in, finds him dead, and then the rest of the movie is kind of a reporter who has been ordered to find out what was the meaning of his last words. What did Rosebud mean? So he goes around and starts interviewing all the people in Charles Foster Kane, Citizen Kane, in his life to kind of discover what this mystery is.
And I can appreciate that as the characters are trying to figure out what is or what means Rosebud, we as the audience are taking a slightly different journey, which is, who is this person? Why do they act the way they act? What informs their decision making along the way? I was taken by Orson Welles' acting in this, even if you set aside that he co-wrote, directed a lot of what we see visually is his doing, and he had already done War of the Worlds, I think, at this time. So there's a brilliance there, undeniable. I was pretty pumped that before we even see old shriveled man holding a globe, that we got to see two monkeys sitting in a tree as we venture our way up to Xanadu, the palatial home in which Citizen Kane dies. So I appreciated that. To what extent do the traumas of what the fuck? I mean, can you please explain to me, in this movie early on, a young Kane is sold to a bank to be raised? I couldn't figure. Was this something that commonly happened in?
Well, the storyline is his mother was left a gold mine that was supposed to be defunct, and they were still mining it, but somebody that she was close to left it to her in his will, and then it struck millions.
Okay, that's good news.
And then the father was not left any of the money. So the wife, who is actually, if you don't know who that is, the mom is played by Agnes Moorehead. So if you're a fan of the TV show Bewitched, she was Samantha's mother and Dora. Just side note. Anyway,
she was married to Craven Moorhead.
I don't know about that. Anyway, so the thing is that her husband is a drunk. She has a boarding house. She lives in very simple means. She takes all of the money and she gives it to the bank in a trust for her son. So the bank gets out of it. They get investments. They get to do what, to work with the money. And in return, they have to make sure that the money goes into a trust for Charles so that he grows up never having to worry about anything. What's fascinating is the banker that takes custody of him is, one of those guys that does want to look out for him, but he's also trying to help him make money. And there's all these companies he could run, but Kane just wants that freaking newspaper.
But why? Okay, everything you just said is fine, but why does he have to leave? Why he can't have money in the bank and they can't do their whole thing while he lives with his mom and dad? Like, I'll be goddamn if there's a bunch of money.
There's a telling scene in that. And when the father is standing behind the mother and the son hits the banker with the sled in the ankle, and he says something to the effect of, "That boy needs a good thrashing." And the mom looks at the banker and goes, "That's why you won't get at him." Just what he said there.
Oh, I thought that was sexual. Okay.
It could have been that too. But it was the fact that she didn't want him growing up in that environment. So she distanced herself from him. And what it does while I'm advocating for the film, but what it does while he is growing up a multi-millionaire, what it does is it affects him for the rest of his life, because he's abandoned by his parents. He grows up looking for any type of sense or love that he can find, and the only thing he can do with it is to buy it, because that's what he has. And it for 1941, it was such a great allegory for so many different things, because you look at, like, even I was explaining it to my wife today. It was like, you look at politicians that go through this life with an idealistic approach. I'm going to help the downtrodden. I'm going to help the underprivileged. And there's a scene where I'm going to actually play this clip where Kane talks about that, saying, I'm going to help the underprivileged. I'm going to use up all my money. So let's play this scene real quick, and then we'll discuss.
In on another little secret, Mr. Thatcher. I think I'm the man to do it, you see. I have money and property. If I don't look after the interests of the underprivileged, maybe somebody else will. Maybe somebody without any money or property.
Yes,
And that would
money
be too
and property.
bad.
Well, I happened to see your financial statement today, Charles.
Oh, did you?
Now, tell me honestly, my boy, don't you think it's rather unwise to continue this philanthropic enterprise? This inquirer that's costing you $1 million a year?
You're right, Mr. Thatcher. I did lose $1 million last year. I expect to lose $1 million this year. I expect to lose $1 million next year. You know, Mr. Thatcher, at the rate of $1 million a year, I'll have to close this place in 60 years.
And so, yeah, so it's like one of those things like, but it's one of those things where he's making a point. He's like, I've got more than enough money to continue my charitable enterprises. I don't care. And what's so crazy about the film, what's so great about the film, is that as he gets older, his priorities shift. And what turned into helping out the underprivileged really was a quest for acceptance and love that he never got, which is shown when he runs for office.
And I've seen it said before, even outside of the confines of this film, that if you're not a liberal as a child, you have no heart. And if you're not a conservative as an adult, you have no brain. And whether or not that's true, it's poignant enough in that in our youth, we have these ideals, and we, and as our obligations become more, as the weight of our responsibilities, and I would imagine for a lot of us, a certain amount of jadedness starts to creep into our lives. It becomes less about these pie in the sky, what can I do for others? And I'm not saying this is for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, and it becomes more of, can I just watch out for me, myself, and I get through this, get on to retirement, and worry about some of this rest of this shit like later at some other time. Now, it's a really privileged point to be in, where you have the ability to just kind of say, okay, I'll worry about my ideals some other time. Right now, I'm just trying to raise some kids, to be successful professionally, to hit these milestones as I progress in my life. But so yeah, I mean, I can see the relationship between that kind of general view and what we see in the story of Mr. Kane, Citizen Kane.
Yeah, I mean, he buys the newspaper with the ideal of looking out for the underprivileged. So he spends everything like exposing, corporate greed and corruption, political corruption. And then he becomes part of the political system and runs for governor. And he's got it in the bag. He's one of those guys. He's like a Kennedy, and people absolutely adore him and love him until they find out that he's fallible. It reminds me of what was it, Gary Hart?
Yeah,
during the election, where he was all but sure to win the presidential nomination, and he was a shoo-in to maybe be president. And then what ends up happening is he gets exposed for having an affair, and then that's it.
Which people wouldn't blink an eye at necessarily anymore.
Yeah, not today, but back then, that's what it's like. And so what's interesting is that, when Charles runs for governor, he thinks that it's so fascinating to me. Again, like I said, I just am fascinated by this film. Is he thinks that's going to solve his problems, that's going to be the thing that's going to make him happy. And one of the things I love about the film, and I'm just going to show this still real quick, is how they show the different views of his speech from different angles at different times in the story. So again, Quentin Tarantino wasn't around yet. Definitely inspired by Citizen Kane. You can't tell me he wasn't, because of the non-linear storytelling and the different perspectives. And what's great about the grandiose spectacle of this governor's speech is that was a photo that they used to make it look like it was that big of an arena. And then they took the film stock and they poked holes in it with a pin and shone a light through it to make it look like they were moving, so that they wouldn't. That was really just a painting. It's crazy stuff.
And
But
so another right. So I after watching it and being, entertained enough, I did go back and read about it, because there's got to be a reason why this is number one. And I think if you just sat down and watched this movie within the four corners of it, I don't see how this ends up being number one. There's got to be more to it than this. So I did read about it. And I understand, as you've kind of alluded to in a couple of your comments, that it contributed to what people call the language of film. That film as we know it, like you talked about Tarantino, about nonlinear storytelling, about some technical aspects of movie making, whatever they are, that exist now, either didn't exist when this film was made, or existed in ways but were definitely, what would you say, codified by this film. And I think about the language of film, which I'm not as familiar with, as the language of music, right? We I guess I'm probably speaking more to a Western audience or Western music listening audience, but we have a grasp on the language of music: the intro, the first verse, the chorus, the second verse, the bridge, the guitar solo, the call and response. Those things are second nature to us. It requires no thought on our end when we hear a piece of music to know that it fits in the language of music. And the other side of that is it can be jarring when we hear something that doesn't fit the language of music. Pieces by Frank Zappa or Captain Beefheart or John Cale, who will really probably go out of their way to ignore the language of music and create pieces that challenge us as an audience. So I'm sure that if you watched 10 movies that came out before Citizen Kane, and then you watched, 10, 20 movies that came out in the 5 or 10, 20 years after Citizen Kane, that you'd see this codification, if we're calling it that, of film elements. I'm just not sure what that means to a viewer who sits down in a movie seat today, especially, maybe not in 1941, and is not a scholar and is not an academic, and just sits down and is ready to watch a movie for whatever reason they have found themselves in the movie theater. I just have I have a tough time making the two valid ends meet in the middle, where scholastic academic work meets an audience that's entertained by all of this.
Yeah, and I totally get it. It is a film that is polarizing in certain circles. I mean, film scholars love it, critics love it, but it bombed at the box office. Like the average person, it did horrible. It didn't even start making money until they re-released it in the 50s. So it was nominated for like 9 Oscars, and every time it was announced at the Oscars, it was booed. It won for Best Original Screenplay for Orson Welles and Mankiewicz, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the movie Mank, it's about the making of Citizen Kane. I recommend it. Gary Oldman plays Joseph Mankiewicz, who wrote the original screenplay. I would recommend it, but it is one of those things that you either love it or you don't. I love it for certain reasons. I love it because of the story. My wife asked me, she's like, but Schindler's List evoked so many emotions in me. Why do you love Citizen Kane so much? And I'm like, it is a great story, well told. And that's all I look for in a film. For me, it is extremely well told. For me, it is a story of a guy that started out, he had everything he wanted. He had everything in life that he could ever wanted. And then he gets dropped a gold mine on him. And then he's taken away from everything he knows. And he spends the rest of his life trying to buy love and acceptance. And that's sad and poignant in a lot of ways. There's so many things that happen in the film that touch on that. When he fails at becoming governor and his friend tells him, and I'm going to play this clip real quick. It is a great scene where Jedediah, his friend, says, you know, you can't control people just because you can buy them. And I can't say it as well as Jedediah was, so we'll play this clip real quick.
All right. That's the way they want it. The people have made that choice. It's obvious the people prefer Jim Geddes to me.
You talk about the people as though you own them, so they belong to you. Goodness. As long as I can remember, you've talked about giving the people their rights, as if you could make them a present of liberty, as a reward for services rendered.
Jed.
Remember the working man?
I'll get drunk too, Jedediah. It'll do any good.
That won't do any good. Besides, you never get drunk. You used to write an awful lot about the working man.
Oh, go on
He's turning
home.
into something called organized labor. You're not going to like that one little bit when you find out it means that your working man expects something as his right, not as your gift, Charlie. When your precious underprivileged really get together, oh, boy. That's going to add up to something bigger than your privilege, and I don't know what you'll do. Sail away to a desert island, probably, and lord it over the monkeys.
I mean, seriously.
Hey, those monkeys again.
Brilliant. Yeah. Lording over the monkeys. It's a great scene. He goes, you can't purchase somebody's liberty. You can't give them their freedom. You can't buy that for them. He's trying to explain to him, he's hammered, his buddy, because his buddy watched him. What's so great is in the beginning, when Charles lays out the Declaration of Principles, this is what we're going to found our newspaper on. And then Jedediah goes, can I have that? And he frames it.
Yep.
And then later in the film, presents it to him, or he finds it, and he's like,
as an indictment.
Yes.
Yeah. There are obviously really poignant scenes through the film. And again, I didn't dislike this movie. I would say a couple of things. I mean, Orson Welles' acting in this is great, but I think there's literally, Greg, no comparison in the level of acting between Citizen Kane and what we saw in Schindler's List. I mean, Ben Kingsley, Liam Neeson, Ralph Fiennes.
Oh, yeah.
And to say nothing of the largely unknown Polish actors, kids. I mean, to me, there's no comparison between the two. The other part that I have a tough time with, because, like you said, there are the story is really a very common, at least, narrative that we build movies around. That we're talking about here in Citizen Kane. Is I appreciated the moments in the film that were poignant. I appreciated the journey that we're kind of taken on to, again, in the movie, it's framed as what is Rosebud. As a movie, it's who is Charles Kane.
Right.
I appreciated the journey, but it felt to me like hiking through the most beautiful scenery you've ever seen, through forests and past waterfalls and the flora and fauna of all of God's creation. And as the trees open up and you look into the valley below, you find yourself in Gary, Indiana. Like this resolution, and maybe I shouldn't jump ahead, but this big reveal at the end, whether you know what Rosebud was all along or you go into the film culturally having known what it was, which I did, even without having seen the film, that didn't feel to me like a resolution at all. It was just like, okay, it was his sled as a kid, and all he ever wanted was to be a kid again. Well, join the fucking club, you know? Being a kid's fucking awesome. Not having to do anything for anybody ever and having no responsibilities and not ever having to get a snack for anybody or, you know, work a job that you don't particularly care for or all of the things that go along with adulthood. Yeah. I mean, fucking A. You know, my dying words are going to be by the power of Grayskull, because that's what I remember about being a kid was playing with He-Man. Awesome. Everything that came after that, fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Mine would be Yo Joe. So that's cool. But that's so similar. But yet the thing that's to me, Rosebud, take it or leave it. I think it is poignant because the fact that it does talk about that his whole life changed the moment he was taken from his mom. And so he was spending his entire life trying to find that feeling again. And so when he got the globe when he wrecks his ex-wife's apartment and he grabs the globe and he sits down and he looks at it, what's I thought was brilliant, like in the opening scene, they give you a clue. They give you a massive clue what Rosebud is. He's laying in bed and the whole room starts to snow inside him, which I think is beautiful. And then like right when the reporter, one of the first places he goes to is learning about the lawyer, the banker, and the first thing you see is the snow everywhere, which is indicative of what we're looking at. This is why it starts off with Rosebud and you don't even realize it. So it's another one of those things that if you like it, you do. If you don't, you don't. I do like it. I can't help it. I do. I love it. I love the scenes where the banker goes into the reporter goes into the vault to look at the memoirs and the shadows coming in. I love so many of the different visual scenes, the deep focus, which had never been done at that time, where Charles is typing and Jedediah is behind him and both characters are in focus from a distance. Never been done in film before. So there's so many things about it. The scene where his wife is learning how to do opera and you see it from the perspective of the back of the stage. And then you see the same scene later and you see it from the perspective of the front of the stage. So again, all these things, like there's so many things. So like people hate on the Beatles, but yet so much music is influenced by them. People might hate on Citizen Kane, but yet so much film that we love today is influenced by this movie. And I think that's why it's considered number one. So if I could explain anything, that's why I consider it number one.
Sure. And so when you're creating a list of, you know, anything, something's got to be number one, right? But just like in sports tournaments, you know, sometimes you're susceptible to an upset. For specific reasons, you know, and Princeton made a habit of showing up to the men's college basketball tournament and just beating teams out of nowhere because they played this style that was really different. Or Arkansas would also you know, often do the same thing. I will say, and I don't know if you have ever given any thought, but that final scene just before our beloved Rosebud goes into the incinerator, finally, was giving, Greg, this is what the people say the kids say it's giving. It was giving last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark to me, with the big warehouse, like, because they were kind of focused over that mess,
all his stuff,
and as they pan over it and kind of in it, that reminded me of Raiders of the Lost Ark so much, where they pan out and it's that giant warehouse and they're pushing that cart down the thing. The skylight scenes, whether or not that had been done in film before, I immediately caught that as, I bet in 1941 that was a pretty neat effect to see. It probably, as we sit 80 years later here, doesn't quite have the same wow factor that it did then, but everything's foundational at some point in this. Yes, the cinematography was really great. I think that's the point.
I'm with you on that as well. It's like those scenes are really great. The scene in the theater in the beginning, so many things that just weren't done in 1941. What's funny about the opening scene in the screening room where they're watching News of the World, right? And all the reporters get up and they're jaw-jacking. If you don't know, everybody in that room are all the male actors in the film playing reporters. Orson Welles, Joseph Cotton, all the people in there. Again, another like Easter egg type thing. And then it's throughout the whole film. You never see the reporter's face. He's always shielded. It's different little kinks like that just weren't being done. One of the things that I mentioned was, that one scene with Jedediah and Orson Welles, but what a lot of people don't realize is that particular scene is filmed, like they cut a hole in the floor and filmed it from the feet up to where you're looking at the ceiling. And Orson Welles, who was a fan of John Ford and had done this in Stagecoach, filmed all the men looking up at the men, and all the women, the exact same perspective, was looking down. And so it's interesting that he looked that was the way they did it. Now, he did that for a reason, because that was where the power influence was at the time. The wife who ends up being spurned, which is just a crazy scene. So run through some of these real quick. When his wife shows up and says, "We're going to this address,"
I was like, "Oh God, don't go!"
Oh, Lord have mercy, dude. That is a great scene. It's like, you can either go with me or I'm going alone.
I'll go.
And he knows what the address is. He knows it's his mistress, and it costs him the election. It's a brilliant scene. There's so many things that I do like about it, and that was what stood out for me. And there was levity. There was funny scenes. I told my wife, this guy reminded me of Sacha Baron Cohen, the opera director.
Yes,
he was brilliant, hilarious. Tells her he can't teach her how to sing opera. His wife trying to learn how to do opera.
I'm not paying you for your opinion on her singing. I'm paying you to teach her to sing.
Absolutely love this dude.
I will say, Greg, I mean, you and I have, spoken, weekly, if not daily, for a long time now, and have become very close friends, I think. It is fun for me to listen to you talk about this film, because it means so much to you, because it's something that you're passionate about. Film. You went and got an unrelated to your career degree in film because you're so interested in it and wanted to know more, and that's really, really neat. I have a very close friend of mine, my best friend Josh, who is a music producer, and I'm not particularly into the kind of music that he produces. It's pop music and the high energy dance stuff, and I don't get it, and I'm not the target audience for it anyway. But when we get together, or when I talk to him and listening to him get excited about the things that he's doing and the things that excite him, obviously that's great, and I enjoy hearing that from him, even if it's not exactly in my wheelhouse. So it is fun. It is nice kind of hearing someone talk about things that they're passionate about. I can tell that you're passionate about this film and the art of movie in general.
Yeah.
That you take great pride and care in that. So I've got to ask you, I mean, we're here at the hour and 48 mark.
Yeah, it's time. So
have you given any thought, Greg, any at all?
Yeah.
To your winner between the number 1 seed, Citizen Kane, and our upstart, scrappy underdog, Schindler's List. Who moves on?
So here's the time that we rely on the audience, and John Gickler put in, because we're coming down to the end of the first episode. Great job, Greg and Eric. In my opinion, your analysis was spot on and fun to listen to. Can't wait for the next episode. And that's great. Thank you so much. And Vinny Cataldo came in and said, this has been amazing. Can't wait for more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. We had a lot of people in here tonight where we've got a few left. So you are the key demographic. So if you want to right now, you can go ahead and type in the comments which ones you prefer, Citizen Kane or Schindler's List. Now, this week, I will go first. And then the next episode, you get to go first with who you think it will win.
I think that's fair.
I am going to go ahead and start, and I will say my vote goes to Citizen Kane. I love Schindler's List, and I'll say why. I love Schindler's List, but it's not something I watch again and again because of the tragedy and the heartbreak. It's not something that's an enjoyable film to me. It's an experience, but it's an experience that I probably will not go put myself through again. Where Citizen Kane, every 5 years or so, I throw it on. It's like, all right, I got to watch it again. For me, it's a masterpiece of filmmaking, and it's a good story. So that's my vote, is Citizen Kane. I kind of feel where you're going, but I'll let you go ahead.
All right. Yeah. No. When I view art, any art, I am generally, or at least mostly, concerned with one thing, Greg. How did that art make me feel? And that's not just movies. It's music, especially for me. It's graphic arts, painting, sculpture, photography, things like literature. My enjoyment comes from how it hit me, right? And between these two, only one of them hit me like a ton of fucking bricks, and that was Schindler's List. Now, whether or not I have the stomach to watch it again with any frequency, I don't know. I enjoyed Citizen Kane, and I respect Citizen Kane, and I understand its critical acclaim, and especially after hearing you talk about it. But I don't think that movie could make anyone feel the things and feel them so vividly like Schindler's List made me feel. And I don't know that I've ever been so happy to have felt so bad for like 3+ hours. I was like permanently uncomfortable, horrified, sad, sick to my stomach. And selfishly, I was very relieved that I have never had to be part of a situation like the ones that I was seeing in that film. I think watching Schindler's List, I'm a better person for having seen it. And I'm a better person for having felt those things while I was watching it, whether they were unwelcome or not. And that's why Schindler's List is my pick for this one.
That I totally respect that. I mean, I get it, because there are films that, like I said, if you did get an emotional reaction and it stayed with you, then that's what you got to go with. So I respect that. I do, and I don't. It is what it is. So it's, for me right now, looking at the votes online, we have a tie. So what we're gonna do?
You're gonna take it to Facebook, or are you gonna take it to?
We are gonna. Oh, we just got another vote.
No, delete John.
John just got another vote.
Obviously, was not listening to my appeal to emotion over reason.
So here's what we're gonna do right now. Citizen Kane has the lead by 1 vote. We're going to leave this up on Facebook and for another, I'd say, till the weekend, and then we'll announce a winner when it goes to the podcast providers.
Okay.
So by Saturday, this episode will be on Spotify. It will be on Amazon Music. We hope to have it on iTunes as well. So there's a lot to come, and there is more episodes coming up ahead, and then we'll declare a winner. But our next show is going to be even more heated. We're going to do a double episode. Hopefully we can get that in under 2 hours. We're going to give that a shot. That's the goal.
I think we can.
I think we can too. This first episode, we had to get a little bit of the hey, how you doing's out of the way, and then we're going to hit these movies pretty hard. So we've got The Godfather, one of my favorite films of all time. I could watch this.
And I've seen this one. I watched this one for Jarrett Goes to the Movie, so I am familiar with The Godfather.
And then we've got Lawrence of Arabia.
That piece of shit. I don't know.
Lawrence of Arabia, you're going to enjoy, I think.
I bet.
It's an amazing film. It is an amazing film. And then the second matchup, which is like somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was Cripplicious.
Criplius. It's got to be Criplius.
Criplius. All right, cool. He mentioned that how is Gone with the Wind even still on this list? Politically, yes. How? But you can't deny the spectacle of the filmmaking, especially in 1939, against Casablanca, one of the all-time favorite romantic war films, action, thriller, romance, everything.
Yeah, this seems to be our Ali Frazier matchup here. Big time.
These are 4 great films. There's a reason why they're AFI's, top 8 of all time. But after the 23rd of July, which is our next episode, we are going to whittle these down even further to get toward our top 4. So please join us for that episode, and we'll look forward to having you.
Greg, I really enjoyed this tonight, episode 1. This is awesome. We have been talking about it. Tonight we finally got to be about it, and I'm pumped. So I appreciate that y'all. I signed up for this as the world's most idiotic idiot, and just said, Greg, if we're going to make this work, you have to make it work. So everything you see, everything that you are experience, except the actual words coming out of my mouth, are from Greg. Every setting up Twitchers and streamers and screamers and Twitter titties and backgrounds and intros and all that. I mean, this is all Greg's work. So Greg, thanks for making it happen, Captain.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, Eric, and I appreciate everybody who turned in for the first episode. I'm glad that you were here. We couldn't do it without people that love Jarrett Goes to the Movies and wanted to have something similar back. Eric and I really want to provide a good movie podcast going forward. So we want to see everybody here each and every week. Give your opinions. Let us know what you think about these 2 movies. Please make the comments on YouTube, Facebook, make them on Twitch, wherever you want, because it's going to matter when it comes down to, who we decide are the ones who win this battle. Because right now, Citizen Kane has a 1-vote lead, and only you can change that. So you can email us with your votes as well at boxofficebattles@gmail.com. And again, there's our Twitch on the screen for you, which is Box Office Battle Pod, or you can subscribe on the YouTube at Box Office Battle Podcast. You can also get us on Facebook at Box Office Battle Podcast, but we can't live stream because of stupid rules until 60 days where we've been live. So please, subscribe to that podcast when you get a chance on that page, and we will see you next time. Any parting words, Eric, before we let everybody go?
Nope, you guys take it easy. And as opposed to Jarrett Goes to the Movies, where we only got long form emails about how stupid I am and how wrong I am, you guys feel free to email the show and tell Greg why he's wrong about all of this stuff. And that'd be great. Y'all take it easy. We'll see you next time.
All right. See you next time on Box Office Battles with Greg and Eric.